Post my check-in pictures online, post a photo shoot online. Like, tell me I've got like an event to go to where I need jeans and a nice top, and I would probably be like crying in my bedroom, like listening to your body and honoring your body. Like, you're not going to regret that.
So what does that like pre-prep phase look like where someone can figure out if this is for them?
If it's not 100% right, it's going to be wrong. Something's going to happen. You're not going to be happy. Just trust that gut.
I mean, I'm really excited for this episode. Thank you so much for coming down. As I was kind of talking to you about, like, before we got started, I think the reason why I'm like so keen for this episode, and I really appreciate you being the person to come on and do it, is because a few of the episodes have potentially come across a little bit like anti-bikini prep, which we've not done on purpose, and always made it super clear that like it can be a great goal for the right person. But obviously when we are talking about certain health issues or certain relationship with food issues, of course, sometimes that can stem from contest prep. And of course it is an extreme sport. It might have a little bit of an impact on your health, which is not a reason not to do it, but it just means we definitely need to have a discussion about how to do it in the best possible way. And I couldn't think of anyone better to have that discussion with than you. So thank you so much for coming down and having this chat today.
You're welcome.
So, I mean, let's kind of get into a little bit of your kind of story and background, if that's okay, because you've got an impressive list of shows, which I'd love to kind of, get into, just to give the listeners a little bit of context of you and your journey and how you now coach the way you coach, which I think is an incredible balance between obviously got high level competitors doing well, but doing right by them in terms of obviously still prioritizing their health and their identity outside of that prep and all of those other things that we'll get into. So yeah, over to you.
Okay, so Jenny, and I have been in the fitness industry like 7 or 8 years now, and I've been competing for over five. And although I've done it for 5 years, I've only ever done 8 shows, because I'm always quite strict with myself that if the show doesn't feel right, I won't do it, give or take, this season.
Couple of exceptions,
but I always am quite like, right, if my body's saying no, listen, stop. So my shows have been very spread out. This year I managed to do 3, which was the most I've ever done in a season. And I have consistently placed in the top 3. So I've done 8 shows and I've always placed in the top 3 in at least one class. And I've won 5. I've still not won an overall. I'm trying. And then I'm also a coach. Like you said, like I coach a whole variety of women, lifestyle, photo shoot preps, competition preps, and also people that have different reasons for doing the different styles of dieting and things like that.
Yeah, amazing. I think that let's get a little bit kind of into like why you started wanting to potentially look at bikini shows as an option for you, and what was that first reason?
So I've always been into sports and the gym. Like, I was a really active kid. I was that kid in like primary school that was going to like 10 different after school clubs like back to back, and then through my teenage years, I kind of got into the gym and fitness classes, and I started watching all like, like the OG kind of fitness YouTubers like Christian Guzman, Nikki Blackett, like that. And I'd watch them do preps and be like, wow, I'd love to do that. Never did anything about it, just trained very casually. I was quite the party girl back in my day. And which a lot of people are like, you really? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I can't see that now.
Those people are like, I can't see that, but I was that person. We start young in Scotland. And then it wasn't until I was living in Australia at the time, and I was just unhappy, and I dropped out of uni like a year and a half before. I then like moved to Australia. I'd been working casual jobs. I was coming home and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I don't really know, but I really love the gym, and the gym had really helped me when I wasn't feeling good mentally there. And I was like, I've never thought of being a PT. Why don't I? Long story short, I sent a message to a guy I went to school with, who's now my fiance, and said,
"Oh, I didn't know that. That's so cool. I didn't know that part." Yeah,
so no, I don't think I've ever said it. But I just messaged him, DM'd him on Instagram one day. I was like, "Hey, where did you get your PT qualification? Because it's something I'm thinking about." And he was basically, "Oh, well, I'm doing mine through an apprenticeship, but I'll ask my boss if he knows of anything." And I was like, "All right, cool." Next day, he was like, "Oh, so my boss recommended this website, but he'd actually be interested to speak to you." Then I was like, all right, cool. Well, he was like, when are you home? And I was like, oh, I'm back on the Monday. I can't remember what day it was. And he was like, can you come in on the Wednesday at like 9? And I was like, cool. So I'd been like back in the UK, like 24 hours, jet lagged. And went to this interview, came PT, and he had been bodybuilding while we were at school. And we eventually got together. He was thinking about doing another prep. And I was like, oh, I'd like to, but I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I really should. And he was like, trust me, like, you can do it. You'll do well. And I did my first prep for a really small show. There's only 3 bikini girls in the whole show, which is absolutely unheard of these days. That would never happen. And I won it. I did a 12-week prep. I tried to prep myself. I wouldn't let him prep me because I was like, that's too stressful. Totally bro. And I was like, right, okay, I like this, but I know I've got a lot to improve. I took a 12-month off season before my next show. And then I won my class at the British finals, the kind of COVID year. So yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind. I feel like I kind of fell into it, but it's really shaped who I am, and I wouldn't change any of it.
Yeah, that's such a cool story. I actually didn't know that part about you meeting Nikki.
Yeah, like we've known each other for years. Like I said, he's done 11 shows, and he did it while we were at school. So he was like that weird kid in the common room with the tub of chicken and rice, and we were all looking at him and being like,
yeah.
But
joke's on you now.
Joke's on me now.
Yeah, you fell for that eventually.
I did.
So. Oh, that's such a cool story. Yeah, I didn't know that bit. I think I love that actually, because I think a lot of the time when we're talking about competing and some of the negatives that people need to be aware of, which I do think is a really important conversation, I think it's really important to also talk about the fact that for a lot of people it's been life-changing. They've not known what they wanted to do. Like they didn't maybe have a massive community before finding competing, and like that's really cool. Like
so many of my friendships, so many of the opportunities that have come my way just wouldn't have happened. Like I wouldn't be here today. Like it has shaped my life it's taken my life in a direction I never imagined that it would go, but in such a good way. Like I am very, very grateful to competing for kind of creating the life that I have.
Yeah, no, I love that. Brilliant. I think let's kind of get into that then. So if someone is going, I feel I want to compete, however, I'm seeing obviously some stuff around why maybe this is not particularly healthy, or there's some downsides to that, which is great because there is a bit more content on that now. A few years ago, I was only seeing it glorified. I didn't really see anyone talk about some of the potential negatives, especially for women. So yeah, if you are someone listening and you're like, oh, I'm considering competing, what are some of these things that someone should know or look out for in terms of like deciding if kind of competing is right for them based on their health and their values?
Yeah, so I would say first, like, know your reason why. Like that's gonna really get you through any prep, any situation. One thing to also remember is that like a prep's never gonna make anything better. A prep will only add stress to any situation. So whether it's your health, your hormones, your relationship with food, your actual relationships, if they aren't in a good place, if you try and prep from that point, it is only going to make it worse. So even like if you've got good relationships and a good relationship with food, a prep can affect that, and you have to go into that kind of willing to do the work to not let it affect things to the same extent. But it's hard, and it, like I say, it's never going to help a situation. It's only going to make it harder to maintain that good level of all those things. So that would be probably the kind of key bits of advice I would say before you start. And also, yeah, just making sure everything's in a good spot. Like, do you have a healthy menstrual cycle? Do you like dieting? Do you like training? Because like I say, it's only going to make it worse. If you don't enjoy sticking to a diet when you've got lots of food, you are not going to like it on the days when you've maybe got to go to low food and high cardio. And if you don't enjoy training that much, you are not going to enjoy it when you're starving and depleted and tired.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think how you've explained that there is so brilliant. Obviously you said that earlier and I'd never heard it explained like that before, which is so great, because I think a lot of people are looking for a prep and they're trying to do it to try and make things better, right? They're going, whether I'm a little bit unhappy or I'm lacking structure or my relationship with food's not great, that is often their reason for wanting to start a prep. And then as you've obviously just said there, actually it's only going to make things worse. So if your reason for wanting to do a prep is to make things better, then potentially you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge commitment financially, your personal life, physically. You got to be prepared for that. And I think that is making sure, one, you're in the best position possible before you start, and also that you are prepared afterwards to do the work, to get your health back, to focus on your relationships, to be able to give back to those around you, to put yourself back to the position. Like prep doesn't just end when the show day ends. Like you got to do a bit of work afterwards as well to get everything feeling good. Yeah,
no, for sure. I think that's also really important. Prep doesn't end when the show day. There's a process after.
Yeah.
But let's go back to even like before prep starts. So how can someone decide if they do love sticking to a slightly more rigid plan with training, with nutrition, with lifestyle? I know you mentioned that you kind of don't take on clients that go straight into prep. So what does that like pre-prep phase look like where someone can figure out if this is for them?
So what I normally do is be like, right, let's make sure you can stick to a diet plan or something rigid, or tracked macros where I can have a look and it is literally that exact. Can you consistently show up at the gym 4 days a week? Can you consistently commit the time to cardio? Can you commit to posing and like even things like finances, like are you in that position? Are you ready to commit to the coaching and the suit and the heels? And obviously there's so many ways you can save money with that stuff, but it's just a commitment on all fronts. And so I think having a period of time where, okay, you don't have a show day yet, you don't have that actual commitment, but going through the motions of it being like a prep can really be like, right, okay, I'm ready. And if people are prepared to work with me for a long period of time beforehand, what I'll normally do is like, right, we'll do like a diet, which is kind of like a practice prep, if you will, even if it's not about getting stage lean. I would never diet someone to a point of like something like losing their menstrual cycle or being that lean unless they were getting to stage. But like having that kind of practice of, right, can you do cardio every day? Can you stick to your diet? Can you miss out on social occasions? And can you come away from that and still being like, yeah, I want to do it again? Because that's kind of what competing is.
Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant. And you're kind of making sure that person can like tick the boxes, but without the pressure of actually signing up for a show date. Yeah. So I think that's really smart. Do you ever get any objections where people kind of go, I don't want to do that, I am ready, I want to sign up for a show in the not too distant future because they're impatient? Or do people kind of buy into that when you explain it to them?
I've had a couple of people who have like done that, and I've said, look, if you, or someone have been like, oh, can I come back to you? And I'm like, that's totally fine. Like, I'm not going to change my standpoint. If you want, like, there are coaches who will absolutely take you straight to a prep. That is totally fine. It might be an exception if they're maybe coming from another coach and they're not happy. And like, I like to know that they can do it. Like, if you're a first time and you've never done anything like that before, then I'm quite strict on that. But it's just a case of, if you can't do it when there's no pressure, you're not going to be able to do it necessarily with pressure. A lot of people think the pressure will help. It doesn't. Like, pressure adds pressure. Yeah. It's not going to make anything any easier. And that kind of circles back to the point I said before about prep doesn't help anything in particular. If anything, prep's going to cause problems. So you need to make sure that you're in that position before you start.
Hey, it's Leo here. Just very quickly interrupting this podcast episode to share with you a really exciting announcement. The Nexus team are now available to take on new one-on-one online nutrition clients. So if you're interested in working with myself or anyone on the team for your nutrition, health, or body composition-based goals, then follow the link in the show notes and you can see all of the information on what that might look like to work with us.
I think that's so important to understand, because I'm even guilty of that myself. Like, as I mentioned to you earlier, I was like, came out of a breakup and I was like, I'm going to use prep as a way of dealing with this. And then in hindsight, I'm like, what was I doing? So
I've done it too. Yeah. Like I said before, there was one season where I had somebody make a comment that I couldn't do it. And I'd also been going through lots of like emotional stuff with family, things like that. There was a lot going on in my personal life. And I was like, I'm going to prep. And the whole prep, things just kept going wrong. And like Nikki, my boyfriend, or fiance, sorry, was coaching me at the time. And he was like saying to me at like 10 weeks out, like, I think you should pull the plug. Like, I really don't want to stop. And I was like, if you don't coach me, I'm coaching myself. Like, I'm doing this. And I was so stubborn. And it was all for the wrong reasons. I was trying to prove a point to somebody. I was trying to show that I can do it. But I was like, it wasn't for me. It wasn't from a good place. And that nearly ended my competing career. It didn't. I took a year off after that. I found my why again. I got myself back. I then did like a secret prep leading into this year to be like, no, this isn't for social media. This isn't for anybody else. That bad prep, I like weekly vlogged on YouTube and everything, and it was successful on paper, but mentally, that like I said, it nearly stopped me from doing it again. And that's why I'm so big on screening the pre-show process of my first timers and things coming in. Is being like, no, like, I've been there doing it for the wrong reasons, and trust me, you don't want to be there.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I love that you said there, on paper, it looked like you had a very successful prep. I think, was that, you won that show?
Yeah, so in 2021, I won my class at the regional, and then I came third at the Arnold's 2 weeks later. So
massive show.
Yeah. And like, the thing is that like, my physique was still good. I was still lean. This was also a year, like, I hurt my back middle of that prep. So my training had to all suffer. So my body wasn't looking as good as it could, but like, Nicky, bless him, like, he got me into such a good position, even though I was like, you know, I shouldn't have been doing it. I was pushing through back problems and poor training, and my body was saying no. So we were having to like refeed, then really dig. And you know, I was doing all the brutal stuff, the 2 hours of cardio and the 800 calorie days and getting no drop. Like my diet was literally like white fish and egg whites. Like I've done all that stuff, and I'd done it the year before and been happy doing it. And then this year was just so different mentally and how I felt. And yeah, I look back and like I'm always like no regrets, and it has taught me so much, and I guess this has put me in a position that I'm in today. But if I could go back, I wish I could get to like 10 weeks out and be like, that was a great mini cut, let's stop.
Yeah. I think that's a really important lesson, is that like there's nothing wrong with like quitting, and I even use that term loosely, right? You're not a failure, like your body's not happy. There are some unfortunate, quite serious consequences that sometimes can occur from competing. I know a few girls that are infertile, girls that are on HRT that are like our age, like, and obviously I'm not judging if that was what was right for them, but I do think sometimes it's really important to hear someone say like, are you sure you want to do that? Because some of these consequences aren't reversible. Yeah,
exactly. And I think listening to your body and honoring your body, like you're not going to regret that. And the thing is that like I think you can get so sucked in the moment of being like, I'm a competitor, but at some point you won't be. At some point your competing will stop, and whether it's at 25 or 30 or 35 or 40, or maybe you're coming into competing like later in life, like at some point that identity that you're really associating your life with, it's going to stop, and you have to live with all the decisions that you made while you were in that bubble. And it does feel like a bubble of hype and I kind of said this to you earlier, is that when you're prepping, everybody is cheering for you, everyone's excited, and especially if you do well on a show, like there's this big hype, and then you kind of, it stays around a little bit when your shows end, and then all of a sudden people kind of stop caring because now you're not lean anymore and you don't look really cool and you're not going and winning things, and you have to be like really comfortable with who you are and what you do outside of that as well. And just like I say, live with those decisions of the friends you make and the things you do to your body after the competing bubble is gone.
Yeah. I'm smiling at that because I've kind of got my group of friends that like train because they like training, but they're not in this world at all. And I remember after my show, and I'd kind of like neglected them a little bit for a few months, and obviously they like banter you for that a little bit, like, oh, you're allowed back out now. And it just laughs because I'm so glad that like I had a bunch of friends. One of my shows was actually the day before, I don't remember what James Bond it was now. I think it was Skyfall, so that's like how long ago I competed. But it was the day before Skyfall came out, and all I wanted to do obviously after that was like spend a day with my friends and like eat sweets, right? Because you've just done a show. And I remember a bunch of my friends kind of did like half days at work, or the ones that were self-employed, like took the kind of the evening off, and we all went over to Brighton, ate pick and mix, and went and watched Skyfall. And I just remember being like, I'm so glad that I have like now competing and fitness friends, but I've also got this other group of friends that just didn't give a shit that I was on prep. And they were there for me afterwards, and like I feel very lucky to have that. So yeah, like all of this identity stuff we're about to speak about like is so important.
Yeah. And I think as well, like keeping an eye on who supports you while you do it is good. But not this is like something that I speak about a lot, is that people don't have to understand to respect what you do. So like some people will not understand, but they also won't respect it. Like they're the people that will make the comments. Like they're the people who don't understand and then don't necessarily want to hang around with you because you're not doing the things that they're doing. And that's fine. Like everyone's entitled to it, but there will also be people in your life who maybe don't understand and who don't do it themselves, but if they respect it and they support it, like those are your people. And obviously they're the people that do it and respect it and support it as well.
I think as well, one thing I never really appreciated until more recently was obviously you being on prep can be like fairly triggering for some people around you. And I feel that maybe that's slightly more relevant for women too, because if they've got often a fairly disordered relationship with food, which you might not always know about as a friend, depending on how close you are or how recent that is, that potentially can be quite triggering for your friends to be like, I'm not allowed to eat this, I've got to eat it out of a tub, I can't come to the restaurant, oh, I've tracked my calories today, I'm not allowed anymore. Or, you know, there'd be times where I'm out eating dinner and I'm like, oh, I've got 4,000 steps to do, and I'd like go for a walk after dinner to hit my step target. Like that potentially can be quite triggering for certain people. So like maybe it's not that they're not supportive of you or don't want to be supportive, but actually it might not be nice for them.
Yeah, and this is when it just comes like to communication and being really open and honest with the people around you. I mean, obviously you can't force anybody else to be open and honest, but I always say to people, like, don't ever hold back or change your life because of what I'm doing. Like, I am always more than happy to accommodate. Like, there was a time like when it was in that prep that I've just been speaking about, where Nicky was in the middle of a big off season, and every leg day he would have 5 guys, and I would take my tub of fish and veg and go get a peppermint tea from Starbucks in the Metro Centre, and I would sit with him and watching Meet Five Guys like once a week for several weeks. And a lot of people are like, how did you do that? And I'm like, because it's not his fault. He's not making me. No one's got a gun to my head and been like, prep, like, it's a choice. And as long as like you communicate, I would never expect anyone else to change. And I think making that very aware to the people around you, because it can also kind of come back sometimes as well. Like I've had people who are like, oh, you're no fun to go with a coffee for, like, 'cause you're not having the cake. And I'm like, well, that's fine if that's what you think, but I'm not sitting here judging you for having the cake. If anything, I'd be like, oh, tell me, is it good? Like, oh, I can't wait to join in again. And it's always a temporary thing. And I think that explaining that to people as well can sometimes be really helpful, is that prep is a season of life. It is not your whole life forever, obviously, depending on the levels to it.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to get into that, because obviously what we're going to, talk about as well kind of come down to identity. But just before we get into that, one question before I forget is, earlier you mentioned in terms of those like prerequisites of being healthy and the importance of having like a healthy menstrual cycle. I think there's still a little bit of kind of confusion around that in terms of like what actually is a menstrual cycle, what is a healthy menstrual cycle, and what are some signs and symptoms that it's not particularly healthy, and therefore what kind of boxes is a woman trying to tick here in terms of going, yep, I have got a healthy menstrual cycle, so that's good, I could consider prepping.
Yeah, so obviously birth control aside, if you're not on any of that, you want to have a regular cycle, one that's not causing you so much pain that like you can't do anything. Just making sure that also as well, like being able to look at your daily food and things as well. Like even if you're maybe on the surface level feeling like everything's okay, like have you got a good baseline of calories? Are you eating carbs, fats, like enough protein, all those things every day? Like making sure that you're in a position where you're not even thinking or worried about those things, because like I say, prep makes nothing better. So as soon as you start restricting your calories, if there's any issues, like they're gonna, and I do see it with clients, like I've got clients had clients in preps before where, as we diet down, they're noticing, oh, my periods are getting more sore, more painful. And I'm like, unfortunately, that's your body, like it's under stress, right? It's probably, we're maybe getting to the point where we will potentially lose it. And I mean, I have that discussion with all my girls before they start, like, you have to be prepared that is something that may happen. I'm going to try and not let it happen, but if it does, we'll do everything we can at the end to sort it out as well. But that's a risk,
Yeah, I love that you have that conversation. I do feel like we've almost got a duty of care of coaches to be like, this might happen. I've chatted to so many bikini girls and they're like, I lost my period and I never knew that was like an option. And I'm just like, how did you not know? Like your coach should have told you that.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm also as well, I feel like but the thing is, it's not everyone does. And I think it's also like some people think of it as like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I've got no period, I must be shredded now.
Yeah.
Because I know some girls that compete and they don't lose it. And I've had a client before who's competed and done really well and she didn't lose it. And having that conversation as well is like, this doesn't mean you're not ready. Like it's just so person dependent. Yeah. I'm somebody who loses mine quite easily. I've also always been fairly lucky to get it back fairly quickly post-show. I've never had any issues. I do keep on top of blood tests and hormones and things like that, but it's just one of those things that you need to have those talks before, not after, and not during, and go, just making sure that you're fully aware of the risks, and also like making sure that you're prepared to stay with your coach or go to another coach, or looking into things on your own to get your health back on track afterwards.
Yeah. What are kind of some of those steps post-show that are important to get the cycle back?
So I think something that people really kind of look over is like whole foods, micronutrients, things like that. So
I love that answer. That's not what I was expecting.
No. So the thing is like post-show, you want the cookies and the burgers and the pizza. And like, I've seen it before of like a technique with some people that are like, right, we'll give you more off-plan meals in a week, but keep your food still fairly low, which sounds good when you're hungry. Having lower day-to-day food and more chances to go and have date nights and catch up with family sounds great. But when your body's been deprived, like when you're eating egg whites or fish, and I mean, not everybody has to diet to that extent, this is me, but when you've had a nutrition deprived diet, you should be kind of looking at getting some variety back in there. Like, you might have had like berries on your plan for your diet. Like I would change that for a client or for myself to fruit, like mix up your fruit, have some variety with that. Make sure you're having more variety of veg, getting in whole grains, and trying to base your day-to-day diet around a lot of those things. They're going to help with satiety too, because generally they're quite high in volume, but trying to look at that side of things, I think, can be really beneficial to health. Obviously, you want to still factor in the off-plan meals and the things that you're craving too, but I have noticed such a huge change in myself. This was the first post-show period where I didn't just put in like bagels and jam and Cocoa Pops. I kept on whole foods, and it's probably, I think, the quickest my cycle's ever come back. And I also didn't have painful periods, which I've never had in my entire life. And that's kind of encouraged me to keep all like whole food kind of based. So yeah, that, doing your bloods, I guess, as well. Not trying to reverse diet too slowly. Yeah,
great point.
Yeah. Of course you want to stay kind of lean, but at the end of the day, like, you can't stay shredded forever. Like, you got to, and again, that is about going into it knowing and being prepared that this is temporary. So that would be another one as well. And just being honest with your coach. Like, I think so many things can be helped and avoided if you communicate, like, especially if you need a coach you can trust. You don't ever feel ashamed because you can't stick to something or because you're craving a certain thing. Like, that's why I always say to my clients, like, I'm not here to judge you, I'm here to help you. So, like, don't ever feel afraid. Like, I'm not your mum, I'm not here to tell you off. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah, no, I love that. And probably keep working with you for a few months. I mean, I know a lot of clients do, but a lot of people, as you said earlier, they think prep is done when prep's done. And it's not a case of wanting a couple more months of that direct debit out of a client. It's not that at all. It's that prep genuinely isn't done when prep is done. And if you can have kind of an exit strategy over maybe like a 2-3 month period with a coach, then that's obviously really valuable as well.
Yeah, and that's what I try and get across to people, is that I would love for you to be like, do your show and be like, yeah, cool, you're carefree now, but you're not. And there is work to be done mentally, emotionally, physically as well. Like, it's hard not having a goal anymore and sticking to a diet and eating your micros when you want to eat the cookies and little things like that. It's hard. And so having the support for that, for someone who's maybe, like, I've had horrible reverses where I have gained a lot of weight really quickly. And then I've also had reverses where I've gained, like, kind of slowly. I've had situations where I've got ill post-show and then really struggled to gain weight. Like, my first prep, I got food poisoning 2 days after, and I dropped about 3 or 4 kilos from my stage weight.
Wow. That's the worst possible timing.
Yeah. And then I tried to go to the doctors and they were like, oh, it's the whey protein you're drinking. I was like, it's not the whey they were like, just stop taking your supplements. I'm like, don't think it's quite as simple as that.
Yeah, no, that's not what that was. Let's just go back to the nutrient dense foods for a second, if that's okay. So I love that you started with that. Obviously the other points are amazing too, but I love that you started with that, because the fitness industry at some point the last few years, for a lot of people, it depends on, again, what circle you're in, right? But for a lot of people, the last few years, it has become very much like, if it fits your macros, in terms of like Cocoa Pops, as you said, bagels, jam, cream of rice, malt loaves, right? All of those typical foods. It got to a point where I would see a picture of like Trained by JP's membership site on someone's TV or laptop screen, and then like M1 or like M2 for like meal 2, and it was like, jam, bagels, right? And I was just like, obviously, I think that's actually really cool in a way, because for a lot of people that does digest better, you train better on it, of course, but that seems to have gone so far the other way, where people actually have just disregarded nutrient density and micronutrients, and they're having decent amount of carbs. And I'm having bikini girls say to me, but my carbs are here. And I'm like, okay, well, where are they? And it's like, they're coming from white rice, and they're coming from bagels and jam and cream of rice and whatever, granola. And it's like, you're not getting in any vitamins or minerals. I just wanted to highlight how much I love that was the first point you led with, and that's really important.
I, hands up, admit, haven't always been like that. And this has been the year that's really changed that for me. Like, the last kind of 6 to 8 months kind of been really getting into that side of things a lot more. We spoke about earlier, just things like micros and thinking about where my food comes from, and not just convenience. And, like, I notice such a difference in myself, my overall health, my energy levels, how I sleep. And it's not that processed foods are bad, and I would never like shame anybody for having those things. And I have had those things regularly in my diet. I give them to clients. It's not that I think they're bad, but I think it needs to be at some point a balancing act. Like, when your diet is consuming of basically like all processed foods, it's right, okay, it's not just convenience at that point, it's just you've got used to it. So it's just invaluable. And if you put it into like chronometer or something, you'd probably shock yourself at how little you're getting.
Yeah, I like that you said that. Had you used that before, like we did the course a few years ago? Were you already familiar with that bit of software?
I'd never heard of it. And it wasn't again until like both me and Nikki kind of got like into all of this bit more, and we were just like, we'd just be putting food in chronometer and just seeing what it is. And it's so eye-opening. And I think that I've really learned a lot in those last few months. And my food has not been as strict post-show, or it's probably been higher, like in terms of calories. And I've been able to do that while eating a lot of whole foods. Yes, a bit of processed stuff here, like a bit of granola here, things like that. But even then, when I'm now buying granola, I'm looking at the ingredients. I'm looking at like, what's it got in it? Does it have lots of added things with big names that I don't know what it does? Like, I really try and focus on that, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea, but I think
well, it's worked for you, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you've got health issues and you're struggling, or your period's not coming back, like
try it. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people know one of those tiny little things often makes a difference. It's kind of like straw that broke the camel's back, you know, analogy, or it's kind of like that toxic burden in terms of, you know, your body can tolerate so much, and if you're just below that tipping point, and then it might only be one little change you make, but you kind of spill over, right? Then all of a sudden you start having symptoms. So each of these individual points often seem quite small, don't they? But you know, they add up. And I think one really important point is that people think prep's maybe healthy from a micronutrient standpoint, don't they? Because they're like, well, I'm eating lots of vegetables, you know, I'm eating lots of, in theory, like quote unquote clean, healthy foods. But as you've like just said, if you put that in chronometer and look at it, you will be micronutrient deficient. Like, you can't not be. Like the maths doesn't physically add up on less than like 1,800 to 2,000 calories. When was the last time you spent prep on like anywhere near 2,000 calories, right?
No chance.
Yeah, it's not happening. So it doesn't matter how perfect your diet looks on paper, or how much variety you try and get in, which kind of is often something you don't do on prep, right? Because same meals every day is just easier. So you've not only got the lack of variety, you just physically don't have enough total food to get in all of those micronutrients, because the maths doesn't add up on less than 1,800 to 2,000. So for anyone thinking, oh, well, I do prep really healthy, I eat loads of broccoli, I eat loads of asparagus, I'm definitely not micronutrient deficient. It's like, by the end of prep, you will have to be micronutrient deficient.
Yeah, 100%. And you can see it in your skin and your hair and all those kind of things as well. So it's like, that's another reason, like, if your body will always tell you when you're prepping if it's struggling, and you got to listen sometimes. Like, obviously you got to ignore it at some point. Like, you're never going to do a fully healthy prep, but you got to be prepared to do the work afterwards. And if you're maybe reversed from a show, and even if you've gained weight, it doesn't mean that your body's in that healthy position. Like I say, I've gained weight really rapidly before and then still not had my period back because I haven't been prioritizing things for health. And I think it's really difficult because you don't want to create like fear foods and things like that. That's not it at all. But I also kind of call it like eating like an adult. Like, if you know what's good for you, you got to do it. Like, sometimes we've got to be adults and we can't spit our dummies out and be like, no, I want pizza. Like, you got to be like, no, okay,
what does your body need?
Maybe I need to have like a stir fry tonight, get a load of veg in, have a smoothie, make it myself, get all the whole foods in. Sometimes you just got to adult it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the pizza's not going anywhere.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Yeah.
Food will always be there. Like, and like I would say, the world isn't going to run out of granola or pizza or chocolate while you're sorting your health out. It'll be there, you know.
Yeah, that's such a brilliant point. I think that more people just need to hear that the nutrients are just so important. I feel like we've done a really good job there of kind of giving like some context in terms of how to do prep as hopefully a little bit healthy, like exit strategy afterwards, like prerequisites for who like can kind of go on prep. I'd love to talk a little bit more about kind of some of those, the identity side of things that we were speaking about earlier. Like, one thing you said to me, if you don't mind speaking about it again here, is even down to like clothes and being like, I don't really like buy many clothes that aren't gym related. I think that it's just, so important to obviously have that identity away from the gym, away from competing, away from being a coach. Finding a quick little story actually is I remember when I did Muscle Nerds with Luke Lerman, and it was actually the Muscle Mentor guys were there as well before they were the Muscle Mentors, and he's kind of going around the room and Luke's like, you know, what are your hobbies? What do you like doing? And everyone's like, I like training. I like meal prep. And I kind of got where Luke was going with it by the time he got to me. But yeah, like no one had anything outside of being in the fitness industry. Yeah,
it's so common though. Like for me, I am a coach. I live with my partner, who's also a coach, and we compete, we gym. And it was when I was on another podcast, like a few weeks ago, I'd just finished my prep, and they were like, who is Jenny Hamilton? And I was like, oh, I'm a coach and I compete. And then my mind was just like blank. And I was like, oh my God, like, is that all I am? And I sat on this for like days and I was like raging. I was like, why as a 25-year-old can I not decipher who I am apart from what I do? And so, yeah, I've been on like a little bit of a journey recently to work on that side of myself and do things like I would honestly go into a shop like H&M and like I've left like almost having a panic attack of being like, this is so overwhelming. There's so many clothes and there's so many options and I don't know what to do. And I didn't even want to try anything on. It just all felt so scary. And like this was a few weeks post show. I wasn't out of shape. It wasn't anything to do with body image. It was just about comfort zone. Like put me in a pair of shorts and a sports bra or a sparkly bikini on stage. Like I said this earlier, like
you'll own it.
That is my comfort zone. Like post my check-in pictures online, post a photo shoot online. Like that's totally fine. Tell me I've got like an event to go to where I need jeans and a nice top and I would probably be like crying in my bedroom like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I think that that's such a hard thing. And again, like this is the kind of work you should be doing. Like don't be like me. I did not do that work. I let myself be fully encompassed by this person. And then before you know it, you're like, wow, this work's going to have to happen sometime, either when I fully stop competing or now. And I was like, right, I'm going to do it now because otherwise
so smart.
That identity crisis is going to be huge. Like when you know that there's definitely no more preps and there's definitely no more of that, it's going to be like, well, what now? And so I would rather be prepared for that now, doing other things and just finding out who I am. And you don't have to know straight away. Like I'm still experimenting. Like I'm just trying to do little things like if I'm got a rest day from the gym, if I'm doing something like coming here and doing stuff like that, don't just put leggings and a t-shirt and a hoodie on. Like put something different on and, have things in my wardrobe that allow me to do that. And it's been a journey. Like I had a big personal one. I just went on holiday and I actually felt like I went and shopped for outfits. The holiday I'd been on previously, I just used whatever I'd had and I'd just been like, oh, I don't care. I'm just going to chill. Whereas this year I was like, no, I want to feel good. Not because of my body, not because of staying lean, but because I like how these clothes make me feel and I feel like I'm expressing myself. And I used to be really into that. Like in my teenage years, like I say, I used to go out partying all the time. I would happily do all those things. So I'm finding that balance of I can be the fitness person, but I can be somebody else too.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Can I just say for anyone listening on the audio rather than on YouTube that Jenny is not in gym clothes today. She's put on a really nice outfit, so she's not being a hypocrite. She's doing the work.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think isn't it interesting how it took someone asking you who you were on a podcast to kind of like realize that as well?
Yeah, like I actually like have said to him like that was like a pivotal moment. And I was just like, something needs to change. I need to be able to answer that question. I need people to say like, and just be confident in those other areas of myself. And, like I've been trying lots of different things. I've been trying different ways of moving my body. Like I'm not in a contest prep now. So I've been trying to do things like go for runs and I've been to Pilates and hot yoga and like, wow, I can enjoy these other ways of moving my body. That's cool. I've been doing things like, right, I'm going to do some gardening with my mum and like,
I love that.
This sounds so silly, but like before I'd have been like, oh, well, we'll just go for a walk, just do my steps, like keep the garden plain. But like, I've actually been growing my own veg, like
that's so cool.
Micros as well. Like there's crossovers between all these things. Like your personality can be whatever you want it to be. And I think that the competing industry kind of glorifies you being like, I am the competitor. This is my life. This is 100% who I am. And so many people who compete also coach. And before you know it, your life is this entire little bubble. And someone bursts that bubble, it's like you got to be prepared to have other things outside there.
Yeah. I think that's so key as well, because if you do get, like you were talking earlier about some injuries to me, like if an injury does happen and you're like, I can't do a show this year or ever again, I just can't really train, to that extent, or even obviously chronic dieting can flare kind of injuries up, right? So if that injury happens, you don't really get a chance to then like, oh, I'll worry about that when I'm done competing. Like probably super smart to do what you've done here, which is like, I can figure this out simultaneously to competing. Yeah. And if obviously touch wood, like you don't get an injury, but if something does happen and you can never do another show again, like you've done that work to be in the best possible position to handle not a great situation. Whereas a lot of these people, if that does occur, it's a really crappy situation and they won't be in a good position to handle it because just all of their identity is going to be taken away overnight.
Yeah. And like that's kind of how I felt when I did like a year-long off season after doing kind of 3 seasons that were like, I think it was 2019, 2020, 2021, and then I took 2022 off. And in that year, I kind of had these feelings. And then I just kind of, what I did was I got myself mentally ready to prep again and into a good position to have like that nice quiet prep. And I kind of did some of the work in terms of like, okay, I really enjoy spending time like with my family, on going walks, like we got a dog, just became like permanent dog mum status. Like that was a big part of my identity and still is. But like I didn't do the full work, and I used kind of a prep to not mask the problems, but to like, I was like, all right, I feel happy now, let's prep again. And then before you know it, you kind of undo a lot of that work that you just did. Like it's kind of a running joke with me and Nikki, where Nikki will be like, oh, you're happy now, so you're going to do another prep again and give yourself loads more work to do to get yourself back to being happy again afterwards, because it's hard. And it is, you become that person solely. And because so many people just, that's all they want to talk to you about. People just want to have those conversations about, oh, how did you do? What shows you doing? Yeah. And now when people say,
how are you bringing up your readouts?
Yeah, like, oh, what are you doing now? Like people still ask me that question. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just living.
Yeah.
And then people are just kind of, oh, okay. And then they don't ask you again, because it's like living isn't fun or exciting. Well, it is fun, but it's not fun for them to talk about. Yeah. They want to hear about how crazy your diet is, or your cardio, or what your show plans are. And yeah, sometimes I used to be quite open about having like big goals within it and wanting to like have the pro cards and that doesn't align with what I want anymore. And that takes so many people back, where they're like, what do you mean you're not going to do like a pro qualifier? And I'm like, well, I would like to, but it's going to cost me this much, and it's going to take away these weeks on prep, and I want to focus on my health, and I want to save that money to do something else. And for people in that bubble, that's like, whoa, why would you do that?
Yeah, they're almost like offended, aren't they?
Yeah, like, how could you not want to go for more? And it's like, well, actually, I'm just so happy with what I did. And my biggest win was like that first show I did this season. Like I did the whole prep secret, because I was like, if I need to, like I actually was aiming for an earlier show and I wasn't going to make it. And there was no pressure because I hadn't told anybody. So I could be like, oh, well, just do the later one. And it was as easy as that. And it should be as easy as that regardless. But yeah, it's having that identity away from it as well, I think also helps, of being like, well, if I don't do this show, my life isn't over, you know? I think that's a huge thing, because when you are in that, it feels like life or death. It feels like your whole life is going to be over if you don't win or you don't place how you want to. And that is not and I've been there. And like I say, I beat myself up so much after my 2021 season, even though I walked away with a first and a third, which are still great results. I beat myself up about it because I was in that point where like anything other than the absolute best means my life is over, but it's not. Yeah.
Not only is it not, it's not like a different sport where maybe, I mean, most sports you don't control who else turns up on the day, but like there is this other massive variable that you don't get to control, which is who else turns up on the day.
I always say like now that you like, obviously there's a lot of talk about like manifesting your goals and things like that, and I'm big on this, but what I say is that like the universe or God or whatever you believe in will know when it's your time. And like there are only like if there are 20 girls in your class, no one's going in being like, oh, I'd really love 19th place. Like everyone wants top 3, top 2, top 1. Like everyone wants the pro card, everyone wants it. And so if you're all going in and trying to manifest it, it's still only ever going to be one person's day. And it doesn't mean that you're not good enough, and it doesn't mean that you're less of an athlete because that day wasn't your day. And I sometimes have like people being like, oh, I'm really upset about my placing in my first show and like I won and then I didn't get the overall or anything like that. And I'm like, look, you can, like, I've been in this 5 years. I've done 8 shows. I've won 5 times. I've never won an overall. It's never been my day. Like, and I've always said, oh, I'm going to keep going until I get it. And I'm like, no, like that doesn't matter. What matters is, do I have good experiences while I compete? Yeah. Okay. As long as it's good and it's enjoyable, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, because I think if you like hearing that externally, right, I'm not focusing on Jenny's not won an overall. I'm focusing on the fact that you've gone from like moving back from Australia, which is quite a massive decision, to the other side of the world, not knowing what you want to do with your life, to being where you are now, which is, you know, obviously fiance, new friends, You know, you've got some like respect in the industry, you've got sponsors, you've got a business, and you've done that in like 5 to 7 years, depending on how you want to look at it. Like, that's incredible. So like focusing on the fact you don't have an overall would completely detract away from all these incredible things that you have achieved and the industry has given you.
The thing is as well, is like, nobody really remembers apart from you. Like, if I like even said to like anyone listening to this, if I said, right, think of your favorite competitor, tell me all their placings at every show they've ever done. Most people wouldn't be able to list that for their like favorite competitor on social media, because that's not what you resonate with. You don't resonate with the medals and things as such. It's going to be more so their personality. And of course, winning or doing well gives you the platform a lot of the time, but a lot of the time people's favorite competitors are their favorite because of the personality they show, or they've got this incredible physique, but no one can remember the exact placings. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in that. So, you know, like I have a bit of an analogy. Like I do, or have done a seminar with one of my clients. We called it like Fluent to Prep. It was all about prepping positively. And there was a little analogy I used at the end of the seminar that I think would be really good here. And I call it the prep cake, right? So if you think about prep, the cake is like the prep itself. So the dieting, the training, all of that stuff, like that is prep. And then you've got the icing, and the icing is like the memories you make on show day, the friends you make along the way, like all of those, the emotions you feel, how you feel about your look, that's your icing. And then your sprinkles, that is the placings and the pro cards and the sponsorships. And you can have a fully functioning cake without sprinkles. Like you can have a delicious cake and a lot of people wouldn't even notice the sprinkles were missing. But if you don't have the cake itself, or if you don't have the icing, like not many people want a dry cake with a bunch of sprinkles on top. Like, and that I think, like I always laugh because I'm like, prep and cake, could probably think of a better one, but
I think if anything, that's perfect.
Yeah, because I just think if you put the pressure on the sprinkles, you risk losing the icing, which is what's holding everything together. And if you focus on baking your sponge, like doing all that work in prep, on getting your icing on there, having the best time, making the friends, making the memories, like supporting each other, like all of that stuff, when the sprinkles come, it makes it better. Like otherwise, no one remembers the sprinkles.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. And no one just wants to eat the sprinkles. They literally do.
No one wants a handful of sprinkles with.
Never have I done that.
Cake. No, exactly. They don't taste of anything.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy. I love it. I think if anything, the fact that it's a cake and we're talking about contest prep, really just
anyone on prep, I'm sorry, talk about cake.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. It doesn't quite work the same with like a rice bowl. So
no.
That's brilliant. Tell us a little bit more about that seminar that you did, because I think that's really interesting. I love that you're doing that. I think there's definitely should be more of those kind of things in the industry for people to learn from.
Yeah, so myself and my client/friend Eden, she has her posing business, Project Pose, and we were just brainstorming and chatting one day, and we were like, I wish there was kind of something that would allow there to be talk about how to have a positive prep without it necessarily being anti-competing, or like just I wish there was a way of like helping people prep in a positive way, and there just seemed to be kind of nothing there, and we're like, well, why don't we do it? So we wanted to create a seminar. We did our first one on prep, but we want to do them for off season as well, of just like how to handle the mind side of things, because there's a lot of advice about like, you know, reverse dieting or dieting and regaining a menstrual cycle. And you can find a lot of the kind of sciencey stuff, I guess, but like the emotional side of things, I think is quite neglected. And a lot of coaches won't cover it.
Yeah.
A lot of your coaches will like, they are diet and training and they're not necessarily there to help with that side of things. And that's totally fine. But I feel that like that you can't get to your best physical self without dealing with all the mental side of things too. So we kind of split it in half. We did a part about the prep itself and making the process positive, and then also show day, you know, about supporting other people and having a day that's about what we just talk about the process, about the day, about the memories, not about winning, losing, placings, trophies, pro cards.
Yeah, that sounds really positive. When's the next one?
We don't have a date yet, just we're both kind of like trying to figure out, but we're hoping to have one more up north, up my end, Newcastle, Durham way, and Eden is from Southampton. So maybe London or Southampton kind of way. So we'll definitely keep you posted when that goes on.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I'd absolutely love to share that. And were they for women only, bikini girls only, or were they for guy competitors too?
We did women only just so that we could like talk,
Yeah,
no
makes
holds
sense.
barred. But we do want to do one eventually, because I feel like as well, the thing is, it's like, you know what guys can be like, especially your bodybuilders.
Yeah.
They're not always wanting to hear that kind of thing, but that's
Slightly
definitely
shifting though.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more talk about it now, which is really good. And I think especially with just like, people talking about guys' mental health in general, like I think it is something that would be really useful for male competitors to have, is that kind of like safe space of knowing that like struggling's all right. Like, you know,
I think you'd be surprised with the turnout.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of people I'm thinking of, you can probably imagine who obviously I think all of whom have stopped competing, at least for now, fairly prominent English, you know, guys in the physique world that talk about that quite a lot since they've kind of finished up competing, and that's kind of done the industry a lot of favours.
Yeah. No, it is being spoken about a lot more. And I think again, though, it's like when you're stopping competing, like I used to say, oh, I'll stop competing when it's no longer enjoyable. But I've changed that to like, I'm going to stop before it's no longer enjoyable. I want to stop while it's enjoyable, so that I never get to the point of being like, I hate this, because I want, like I say, this has given me so much, and it has benefited my life in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And like, it's brought me some of my best friends. It has given me experiences and opportunities. And I don't want to get to a point where I look back on those things and be like, ugh. Like, I want it to be like, no, cherished memories. I'm content and I'm done. So I'm not sure when that will be, but I'm happy now. So it might be soon. I don't know. Like, I will prep if it's right. But yeah, I just want to, I think that would be, if more people stopped while they were still happy, I think it would probably be better for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's such a brilliant point. If you could kind of go back in time and have a chat with like 20-year-old Jenny when you were first kind of getting into looking at competitions, what kind of 2 or 3 main things would you love to be able to kind of say to her or tell her?
I would say the small stuff does not matter as much as you think it does. Like, if you're weighing your rice out and it is 41 grams in off season instead of 40, you're okay. And like, obviously in a prep, be precise, be accurate, cool, but like, use your off seasons to relax that little bit. Like, I think I wouldn't have had the season I had in 2021 had I allowed myself that little bit of wiggle room, shall we say. Secondly, I would say not everything is as it seems on social media, and whether that's comparing yourself to somebody else or how prevalent you think somebody is within your industry, is that you are choosing to kind of expose yourself to maybe just that. Like, for a long time, my whole Instagram feed was just bodybuilding. And so it felt like that was the entire world and that was all there was. And just unfollowing a few people or muting a few people and following some different pages, all of a sudden, that universe has got smaller and like other parts of my life have got bigger. And so like, it's not always as it seems. And if you're not happy with what you're seeing on social media, or it's making you feel a kind of way, like, you can change it. And like, I used to feel guilty for like maybe unfollowing people I knew in the industry or things like that. And I even say, like, if anyone's unfollowed me that I even know from the industry, if it's because I was making them feel a certain way, I get it. Like, do you? It's not that deep. Like, it's a follow on Instagram.
Yeah.
And third, don't compare what you do to anyone else. Like, I'm somebody who has to push really hard to like diet and things like that. And there are some people who don't. Obviously, you've got things like PEDs and stuff like that within the industry. And I was very naive to that at the start. I thought, no, everyone would admit, everyone would say if they were. And they could be like, you're an idiot. You know?
You aren't an idiot.
Yeah.
A little bit ignorant, but not an idiot.
And it's always a personal choice. And like, you know, there are also, there's levels to it as well. Like, some people, if they take fat burners, they would say I'm natural, and they think they are. And I would maybe not consider that natural, but like maybe they do. And it's just like, there's so much disparity of what that is. And also like, coaches will always love to post like their genetically gifted clients that can diet on 1,600 calories and 20 minutes of cardio.
Yeah.
Like, they love to post that. But they'll also have the clients kind of like me that are on the low calories and they're doing the high cardio and it's a big push, and that's okay. And I get quite a lot of people kind of like, I try not to post too much of my prep diet and things anymore because it is very extreme, and I would hate for anyone to copy that or to think that's all prep is, because I'm also possibly an exception of having to push really hard. But when you're like a 50 kilo female on stage, your calories have to get low and things like that. But that doesn't mean that you're not meant to do it. It doesn't make you less of a competitor. Like, it doesn't matter how high my food gets in off season, I still got to do cardio to a high level and food to a low level. And
yeah, they're really
that's not
great
my
points.
fault. So
Yeah, it just is what it is. I love that. I think coaches will always try and glorify that. Look at my client, and he's 6 weeks out and he's not done any cardio yet. And it's like, that doesn't really serve anyone by sharing that type of post.
no, like, and it's cool, and it's like that is great for
good
that
for them.
individual. And like, I've had clients where like they don't have to do that much cardio, but I think it also makes it hard on the people that don't have to do it, because sometimes they either feel like they're not suffering enough, or they're feeling like, oh, I shouldn't feel bad because I'm not doing as much as somebody else. And that's not it at all. But there's just so many levels to this and of what people have to do. And yeah, I try not to, again, like, I've maybe done it in the past. I feel like that's a lot of coaches could get better at. Like, I'm trying really hard to always put my hand up and be like, I've changed my mind about this, or I'm doing this differently now, rather than being like, oh, I never did that.
Yeah, no, same. We all,
Yeah.
like, it wasn't that long ago that we were both like actually very young and very new to the industry. So obviously, if we don't look back at stuff that we don't go, that wasn't great, then we're probably we're probably lying to ourselves, aren't we?
I found a whole bunch of, like, my phone memory was full. I was like, right, I'm gonna go clear out some notes. I had like 2,000 notes of doing people's diet plans on my phone notes, and I was looking back at some of the diets, and I'm like, and this was before I coached competitors, and I'm like, wow, if they came to me now for coaching, they would be like, what on earth is this diet? This is so different.
Yeah.
And it's because that's all I knew. And, you know, you grow and you learn and you adapt. And I think being able to do that is good. And there is more than one way to do dieting, to do anything. So
yeah, I mean, that's a testament to you to be open-minded and be willing to admit that there were things that you weren't doing quite as well as you could have done, and because you didn't know better or different, and now they've improved, which is obviously incredible.
Yeah, no, I think, like I say, I used to think like one way is the right way, and the more, like, the older I get, the more experience I get within the industry, the more I realize, well, actually, your way can be right for you, their way can be right for them, my way can be right for me, and we just got to find that way for each individual. Like, you're an individual person, like, we all have individual needs that coaching needs to fill. It's not about like, this is how you train, this is how you diet, because there's so many ways to do both.
Yeah. So something you said on that first point, that first answer, which was you should go into your prep feeling like kind of off season was like refreshing and you've like recovered and you're ready for prep, as opposed to off season being so difficult that you're like, I'm not ready to start prep. I think that's a really great point. So yeah, let's touch on that if that's okay. Like, what do you kind of mean by that?
So I've done off seasons that are very structured, where I'm like weighing out to the gram, tracking my steps like to the step, not going above, not going below, like, you know, everything is extremely accurate, and that is great and that is fine. But at some point, like, when you're living in that structured, like, obviously there will be some individuals who absolutely can do that, like, that is fine. But for most people, having that level of dedication year round, not just for 20 weeks, it's hard. It is very, and then you like, some point life's going to happen. At some point your electricity is going to go off and you can't cook your meal, or like, you know, like, I'm sure Nicky won't mind me saying this, but like, he used to actually set timers to eat his meal after 2 hours, and if he missed the 2 hour one, he would set another half hour, so it'd be 2.5 hours. It would always be exactly a time to eat. Yeah. And so like little things like that, and then now, you know, we roughly track the time and be like, all right, time to eat now. Or I'll set a timer if I'm going to be doing a lot of work and I know I need to remember, but if it goes in 2 hours and 8 minutes, it's fine. And like, I think like that's when you're going to reach that burnout. If you are not naturally that person, I mean, even if you are naturally that person, at some point you need to learn to roll with the punches a little bit and just be like, life's going to happen. You know, if situations happen where you can't do things perfectly, it needs to not be causing a total meltdown. And like, yeah, when you get to the start of prep, you want to be like, right, I'm ready to be disciplined. If you've been so disciplined that when you get to the start of prep, you're like, oh, I feel burnt out and I've not even done the hard bit yet, that's when the issues come in. And like I say, like by the end of that 2021 prep, I felt like I'd been on prep for like 2.5 years. And although I hadn't been, and my food had been high, and it had been different, it felt mentally like I had been that way. And that made that period of my life quite hard to manage. And I think I'd also used prep to just bury a lot of problems. Like I wasn't dealing with the personal problems because I was just focusing on prep. So, that's a whole other situation.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. I think especially when people started calling it improvement season versus off season, which I'm like, okay, cool. Like I like that. Like makes sense. Like obviously there's no point doing another show if you're not going to improve. So I was like, I kind of like that, but it always didn't make sense to me at the same time, because I was like, well, then you're just creating the same narrative around how disciplined and precise you need to be, which exactly is going to create the problem you just described, where you're going into prep already feeling incredibly burnt out. So yeah, thank you for elaborating on that. I think that's really important for people to hear.
No, yeah, like I say, like I've done both. And I don't think there is that much of a difference between being super accurate all of the time compared to being like that little bit relaxed. What you cause yourself in mental stress outweighs any possible benefit. And also as well, like I've seen it before of like coaches or big people on social media, and they're being like, I'm 100% on, like I live for this, but they are having like their untracked meals, their off-plan meals, but they don't post them every time. Like maybe you have to go and read their blog to see it, you know what I mean? Like, and then it's like, oh, so like I actually, like me and Nikki did a 12-month period where we didn't have any kind of off-plan meal together, which like we did like a couple of cinema dates and things like that. Some of the time I was on prep, but there was like a solid chunk of time where we just didn't do anything like that together. And at some point you look back and you're like, wow, like that was a whole year where we didn't do Valentine's Day or anniversaries or birthdays, it's crazy.
Yeah, and you've got to ask yourself, is it worth that? Is
it
worth that sacrifice?
And for some people it is. And like I've been that person, and when I went through that 12-month period, initially I was happy to do that. It wasn't until I got to the end of that 2021 prep where I was like, oh, I don't feel happy to do that anymore. And because I thought that was the only way to do it, I had that kind of internal crisis of like, oh my God, I'm a bad competitor because I can't be on 24/7, 52 weeks of the year. Like I can't do this. But it turns out you can. And actually just giving yourself that little bit of like give and take at certain points, again, like that post-show period can be really difficult, and you don't have to take it to the extreme of being completely off-piste with everything. Like you still need to conduct yourself where you prioritize nutrition and training, but you can prioritize those things without making it your whole existence.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Is there anything you feel like we've missed today in terms of how we can prep better and do it in a slightly healthier way that you'd like to go over?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. Just I would say is that like if it doesn't feel 100% right, don't do it yet. Like trial doing something first. Like I think a lot of the time people get really excited about a prep as a goal, which is really cool, but like maybe try a different goal first. Maybe try a photo shoot. Maybe try something that's a step down, or like you can do a photo shoot even if you don't get shredded. Like give yourself something that doesn't feel as stressful to try, because it's just coming back to that point again of like prep is only going to make life harder. And I think so many people underestimate just how tough that can be. So yeah, just if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. Like be sure.
Yeah, that's a cool way of putting it. There's nothing in between.
Yeah, like if you're on the fence, like stay on the fence. Wait until like I'm a big one for like intuition and gut feelings. And like I say, that 2021 prep, I was fighting every single gut feeling. Like I knew I should stop. I knew that it wasn't right. I knew that I was damaging my mental health, my physical health, my body. I was getting injuries left, right, and center, and I kept going. And like, if you're having that feeling of like, this doesn't feel right, or, oh, I should stop, or anything like that, like, listen, stage will always be there. Comps will always be there. You can do it at any age, at any time. It needs to be right. If it's not 100% right, it's going to be wrong. Something's going to happen. You're not going to be happy. Just trust that gut.
Yeah, that's a really, really great closing thought. Where can people find out a little bit more about you, your services, any events you've got coming up?
So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm on there just as Jenny Hamilton Coach. One word. All of my competing stuff on there, posing coaching, links to actual coaching forums and things to be found there. And if you want to see a bit of my life outside of competing, I actually, when I had that kind of turning point interview, I started documenting finding myself outside of competing on TikTok. So
cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm Jenny_Hamilton_ on TikTok. And that's just like random day in the life, me trying to dress myself, like me trying to go shopping, like little random insights of things like that. So yeah, I like to keep them kind of a bit separate because I don't want people to think that I'm not into fitness anymore. But yeah, all of the stuff that isn't strictly like bikini prep and client and stuff like that, you can find on there.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I'll check those bits out as well. And yeah, just make sure when you do get any more dates for events booked in, obviously just send them over to my way so I can share them as well.
Yeah, we don't have a social media page yet for Flow, but I'm pretty sure that's something that we're going to work on in the future. But yeah, if you want to find out, stay tuned. It'll be like posts and stories, and I imagine that there will probably be one before the end of the year.
Oh, amazing. We'll make sure we get all of that in the show notes. So thank you so much for coming down today to talk about that. That was absolutely incredible. And I think that hopefully is going to be a fantastic resource that we can both direct people to if they are asking us questions about whether competing is right for them or not.
Yeah, 100%. It saves them a big 10-minute voice note from me.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for coming down. And yeah, I really appreciate your time and I look forward to getting this episode out.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. That was super cool.
Yeah, that was fun.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, it would be amazing if you could do us a massive favour and leave us a review and even if possible a comment. The reason why this is so useful for us is it allows us to know which type of content and which guests are best going to be relevant for you and your goals so that we can continue to make the podcast even better for you in the future. Thank you so much so far for all of your support on the Women's Wellness Show.